Tens of thousands of people were interviewed by Johnny Carson. Artists promoting their movies, artists promoting their albums, and writers promoting their books. Some people, though, were very different. Johnny laughed so hard that he could hardly keep the show going. Some of the guests were so funny that Johnny would just lean back in his chair and wipe his eyes like he was a normal person in the crowd. That's all there is to say about the 15 funniest people Johnny Carson has ever had on The Tonight Show. Robin Williams, the crazy and exciting number 1. Robin Williams didn't talk to the press. He did performance art that looked like talk, made up characters that appeared out of nowhere, moved all the time, and did physical comedy. Johnny could hardly catch his breath between laughs because he told jokes so fast. In just 30 seconds, Williams would change into a Russian poet, a British preacher, and a Southern granny. When you think of Shakespeare, you probably picture a man who had only been to school until the 2nd grade. Wrote some of the best poems ever written. I doubt it. I don't. Going door to door in Stratford after a few beers and asking, "Is this to be or not to be?" Applause, I wrote that as mine. That's mine. I'm with William Shakespeare, right? Kiss my tits. Carson would often lean back in his chair and let Robin wreck the room. You could see Johnny stop being the host and become just another audience member. It's fun to wear tights and have people say, "I can't see anything." No, please give him a dagger. I see a dagger in my hand. What is this? The desk turned into a stage, the chair into a prop. Williams would grab Johnny's coffee cup and use it as a puppet, and he would use the microphone as a golf club. Johnny loved every minute of it. Number 2, Don Rickles, the undisputed insult king. Rickles walked onto the Tonight Show set like he owned it. He roasted Johnny to his face, the audience, Doc Severinsen and the band, and anyone else who happened to be in his line of sight. His crazy energy was legendary. The cigarette box incident, in which Rickles broke Johnny's prized cigarette box during a bit, became one of the most famous events in Tonight Show history. Johnny later attacked Rickles on the set of his show CPO Sharky without warning. What the hell happened to this? You know how long I've had the cigarette box? It happened last night. Who? Don Rickles. I didn't see the show. Did it last night. He's taping across the hall. Someone broke my cigarette box. I just started the show. I picked up my box off my desk that I've had for 9 months. People said you broke my box on the show last night. Well, I really want to stay on your show because I care so much about you. Can I know, please? No. Don't be humble. Please, I want to be with you. So, don't be humble, brother. I want something back. Okay, keep going. No one in that studio knew who Rickles would insult next. Carson would sit there grinning, but you could see him waiting for the next insult aimed directly at him. When it came, he would double over laughing. Rickles treated Johnny like an old friend, which meant he didn't care who he insulted. He would make fun of Johnny's marriages, clothes, and haircut. There were no rules between them. Johnny respected Rickles enough to let him say things that no other guest would dare say. Third, Rodney Dangerfield, the master of the one-liner. Rodney could deliver one-liners faster than anyone else, and each one hit harder than the last. No respect. That was his signature, and he did it every time at the perfect time. You could tell Carson loved Rodney Dangerfield by the way he reacted. He would sit there almost counting the punchlines, waiting for the next one, and laugh even harder as Rodney pulled on his collar and tie to show how desperate he was. I tell you, my neighbor doesn't get any respect either. No respect at all. Are you kidding? No respect from anyone. I bought some rat poison. A girl asked me, should I wrap it up? You're going to eat it here? The girls always made fun of me because I'm not a ladies' man. That's why. You're kidding. I know I'm ugly. I hung my head out the window and got pulled over for moaning. Rodney's whole character was based on failure and shame. My wife, my doctor, my kids, nobody respects me. He did such a great job selling it that you laughed even when you knew the jokes were coming. When Johnny tried to ask follow-up questions, Rodney would just slam through another 5 jokes. The interviews were hardly interviews at all. Rodney was just doing stand-up at the desk while Johnny tried to keep up. Carson never seemed to mind. He would lean back and let Rodney work. Johnny would sometimes wipe his eyes or pound the desk, but most of the time he would just laugh and shake his head in amazement at how fast the jokes kept coming. Number 4, Steve Martin. Steve Martin was the silliest comedian ever. He did magic tricks that were meant to go wrong, banjo jokes, and deadpan one-liners while keeping a straight face. His chemistry with Johnny was razor-sharp, and he was the perfect clueless weirdo against Carson's straight man. They would make simple desk props into huge laughs, and Martin was faster at reading people than almost anyone else. When Johnny asked a normal question, Steve would answer with something completely ridiculous, said as if it made perfect sense. Then they would stare at each other for 3 seconds before the audience lost it. Martin also brought props, like the arrow through the head, the bunny ears, and the white suit. Their whole look was meant to be ridiculous, and Johnny played along perfectly. He would pretend to take Steve seriously, which made the ridiculousness even funnier. It seemed like the two comedians knew exactly what the other was doing and were having a great time. 5th, Joan Rivers, the woman with no filter. She would make rapid-fire jokes about Hollywood, marriage, and herself. Joan Rivers would often make Johnny Carson laugh out loud. She had a brutal honesty that cut through The Tonight Show's polished exterior, and Johnny loved hearing her say things other comedians were too afraid to touch. She would insult celebrities by name. She made jokes about plastic surgery before it was cool to do so. She talked about her marriage, her body, and her career in a shockingly honest way that was shocking for TV at the time. Johnny admired that fearlessness. Rivers didn't hold back. She didn't polish her material for the Tonight Show audience. She came out swinging every time, and Carson gave her the chance to do so. He supported her. He laughed at her silliest lines. He let her push boundaries that other people wouldn't let her. There was real respect between them. Johnny saw Joan as a real comedian, not just a female comedian, and she rewarded that respect by being absolutely hilarious every time she sat down. It's a shame that their relationship ended over the Fox show incident, but when Joan was a regular on The Tonight Show, she was one of the funniest guests Johnny had ever had. Winters was like a one-man improv show. He would make characters out of coffee cups, ashtrays, and anything else on Johnny's desk, and Carson would let him go wild. Sometimes Johnny would hand Winters a random object just to see what would happen, and then he would laugh as Jonathan built a whole universe around a stapler. Winters didn't need a script or any extra work to make something crazy happen. He just needed a spark. He would pick up a pencil and turn it into a fishing rod. Then he would turn into the fish, then the fisherman's angry wife, then the boat. All of this happened in real time with no plan. Johnny liked the chaos. He liked not knowing where Winters was going. The risk of live TV became the appeal. Anything could happen, and with Jonathan Winters, it usually did. Sometimes he would get so into a character that Johnny would have to physically stop him to go to an ad. And even then, Winters would stay in character during the break. The man was fearless and unpredictable, which is exactly what made for great TV. 7th, Bob Hope, the man who made the show. Bob was a comedy giant whose Tonight Show appearances became events. He had killer timing that he had worked on for decades. It was like two professionals sparring for fun when Bob Hope and Johnny Carson were on stage together. Carson would always light up when Hope walked through the door, and you could tell Johnny was proud to trade jokes with a hero who could still kill a monologue after 50 years in show business. Hope never faked an appearance. Even in his later years, when other comedians his age were slowing down, Bob Hope would go on The Tonight Show and make jokes about current events. Johnny had a lot of respect for Bob Hope. They would swing back and forth like tennis players. Johnny would start a joke, and Bob would spike it. Then Bob would start a joke, and Johnny would return it. The crowd was watching two masters at work. Hope represented old-school show business, the kind that Johnny had grown up watching and admiring. So when Bob Hope sat at that desk, it was more than just another day at the office. Hope was Johnny's idol, and he clearly enjoyed working with him. He treated Johnny like an equal, not like a lucky kid, but like a real comedian who earned his spot. Number 8, Tim Conway, was the best guest in town. His slow-burn storytelling and physical comedy often made Johnny fall out of his chair laughing. Tim Conway's secret weapon was dragging out a story past the point where it should have died. Even if it was just a small change, like an eyebrow raised, a pause, or a slight turn of the head, the whole room would go crazy. Conway knew the power of commitment. He would stay completely straight-faced while describing the silliest situations. Johnny would be losing it across the desk, but Tim would keep going like nothing was funny, which made it even funnier. Carson tried to stay calm during Conway's segments, but he rarely succeeded. Tim would talk about something boring, like going to the dentist, but the way he told it, with all the physical comedy and perfect timing, turned it into an epic adventure. By the end, Johnny would be wiping away tears and begging Tim to stop because he couldn't breathe. That was Conway's gift, making the ordinary extraordinary through commitment and timing. Number 9, Richard Pryor, the fearless personality. Richard Pryor's casual storytelling felt completely fearless. Carson had a lot of respect for Pryor, which you could see in the way Johnny listened. He didn't talk over Richard or try to steer the conversation, he just let Richard work. Pryor's presence changed the mood in the studio. He could go from being over the top to being honest in an instant, leaving Johnny and the audience both shocked and laughing. Richard would talk about his childhood, his family, and his struggles with drugs and alcohol, and he made it all funny without trying to. Pryor was a genius because he was honest in a way that other comedians weren't, and Johnny let him be that honest. Their conversations felt real, not like typical Tonight Show interviews where everything is polished and safe. Richard pushed the limits, he used language that made NBC executives nervous, but Johnny protected him. Carson knew that Pryor was unique and that his comedy came from a place of truth that could not be faked, so he let Richard be Richard. It led to some of the funniest segments in Tonight Show history. Number 10, Burt Reynolds and DeLuise. There were whipped cream fights, chair-breaking jokes, and Burt Reynolds dumping water on DeLuise's head. Johnny Carson rarely got control back during these visits. They felt like unplanned bar fights between grown-ups, and Johnny was stuck in the middle, laughing helplessly. Reynolds and DeLuise were pure chaos. They would plan parts ahead of time, but then they would just stop planning and start destroying each other. Dom would laugh at his own jokes, and Burt would hit him. They would roll around on the floor and destroy the set. The audience loved it because it felt like they had no control. Johnny tried to do interviews, but it wasn't working because Burt and Dom were too busy trying to make each other laugh, which caused problems. Carson learned to just stand back and let Reynolds and DeLuise take over the show. He would ask one question and then lean back while they turned it into a comedy boxing match. Johnny would sometimes join in and throw something at them or make a sarcastic comment, but most of the time he just watched and laughed. Their segments were must-see TV because you never knew what would happen except that it would be completely crazy. Number 11, David Letterman, the host's sidekick. Carson was a straight man, so David Letterman's sharp, sarcastic humor went well with him. You could see Johnny's pride when Letterman came on. He let Dave make fun of the idea of a talk show. Their dry back and forth felt like a baton being quietly passed from one generation to the next. Carson understood Letterman's Midwestern irony perfectly. Dave would make fun of the desk, the chair, the curtain, and everything else about The Tonight Show.